The prison transport ship carried the humans away from the megastructure toward a gray moon that hung in space like a dead eye. Cathara Prime was known throughout the hegemony as the place where spirits were broken and defiance died. Li Hyun and his crew sat in energy restraints, but they spent the journey observing their captors and asking questions about the prison system. The alien guards grew more uncomfortable with each innocent inquiry about cell design and rehabilitation programs. "This is most irregular," muttered Guard Captain Zelmoth to his companion. "Prisoners usually weep or rage by now. These humans act like tourists." Dr. Park Gina overheard this through Yuntai's translation device. "We're curious about your methods," she said to the guard captain. "How do you measure success in behavioral modification? What's your recidivism rate?" Zelmoth stared at her with all four of his compound eyes. No prisoner had ever asked him about statistics before. The prison facility came into view as they approached the moon's surface. It was a massive complex of interconnected domes and towers, built to hold 50,000 inmates from across the galaxy. Energy barriers flickered between buildings, and automated weapons tracked their transport as it landed. "Welcome to Cathara Prime," Zelmoth announced as they disembarked. "Here, you will learn your place in the galaxy." Kim Woo looked around at the facility with a professional eye. "Interesting security setup, motion sensors, energy barriers, automated tracking systems. But I notice you have blind spots in the coverage between towers 3 and 5. The guard captain's mandibles clicked nervously. "You will not be planning any escapes." "Just observing," Kim Woo replied calmly. "Old habits. They were processed through the prison intake system. Each human was separated and assigned to a different wing of the facility. This was standard procedure, designed to break social bonds and increase despair. But as they were led away, the humans called out encouraging words to each other. "See? You at dinner, Park," Li Hyun shouted. "Learn something interesting, Song," Park Gina called back. "Don't teach them too much, Kim." Yuntae laughed. The guards looked at each other in confusion. Prisoners weren't supposed to maintain morale when separated. Li Hyun was taken to the maximum security wing, where the most dangerous political prisoners were kept. His cell was a bare cube with walls designed to prevent any form of escape. The energy barrier hummed as it sealed him inside. Across the corridor was another cell containing what had once been the warrior king of a proud species. Rex Mora had been imprisoned for 20 years, and the fight had long since been broken out of him. He lay on his sleeping platform, staring at nothing. "New prisoner," Rex Mora said without looking up. "Don't worry. The pain stops mattering after the first few years." "I'm Li Hyun," the captain said, settling down comfortably in his cell. "What's your name?" Rex and Mora turned slightly, surprised by the friendly tone. "Rex Mora, former king of the Valdris system. You?" "Captain of a human exploration vessel. We had some navigation trouble." "Human?" Rex Mora repeated slowly. "Never heard of your species. You'll learn quickly here. The hegemony crushes everything eventually." Li Hyun nodded thoughtfully. "They certainly have impressive resources. Tell me, how many different species are imprisoned here?" "Dozens," Rex Mora said. "Maybe hundreds. What does it matter? We're all broken in the end." "Are you?" Li Hyun asked with genuine interest. Meanwhile, Dr. Park Gina was assigned to the science wing, where prisoners with technical knowledge were kept. Her first interrogation began within hours of her arrival. The interrogation chamber was designed to be intimidating. Harsh lights, uncomfortable restraints, and a massive alien called Interrogator Zulneth looming over a metal table. Zulneth had broken thousands of prisoners over the centuries. "You will tell me everything about human technology," Zulneth demanded, his voice like grinding metal. Park Gina looked around the room with scientific interest. "This is fascinating. The psychological impact of the lighting is well calculated, and the acoustics are designed to amplify intimidating sounds. But I notice the ventilation system has a harmonic resonance that could be used to create interference patterns." Zulneth paused. Prisoners weren't supposed to analyze the interrogation chamber. "You will focus on my questions," he growled. "Of course," Park Gina said politely. What would you like to know about human technology? Our quantum drive is particularly interesting. We create stable tunnels through spacetime by manipulating zero-point energy fields. For the next hour, Zulneth found himself on the receiving end of a detailed physics lecture. Park Gina explained human technology with the enthusiasm of a teacher, drawing diagrams in the air with her finger, and stopping occasionally to ask if he was following the math. This is not how interrogations work, Zulneth finally said, sounding confused. Oh, are you interrogating me? Park Gina asked. I thought we were having a scientific discussion. What specifically did you want to know? In the security wing, Kim Woo was undergoing physical torture designed to break his will to resist. The torture master, a cybernetically enhanced alien, called Paingiver Kraz, had never failed to reduce a prisoner to begging within hours. Kim Woo was strapped to a device that sent waves of agony through his nervous system, but instead of screaming, he gritted his teeth and observed. Interesting technique, he said through clenched teeth. Neural disruption rather than physical damage. Less maintenance required on the equipment. But you're missing some opportunities for efficiency improvement. Kraz stared at him in disbelief. You should be begging for mercy. Why? Kim Woo asked. This hurts, but I've had worse training injuries. You might want to try a broader frequency spectrum. The current setting only affects about 60% of human pain receptors. The torture master turned up the intensity, but Kim Woo continued his analysis. Better, Kim Woo said. Though I notice the power consumption spikes when you increase intensity. You could achieve the same effect with better targeting and use half the energy. Kraz turned off the machine and stared at the human. No prisoner had ever offered to improve the torture process before. Song Minji was placed in the technical wing, where her engineering knowledge was to be extracted through psychological pressure. The interrogator showed her images of destroyed human colonies and threatened her people's future. Tell us how to duplicate human propulsion technology, or your species will be exterminated, the interrogator demanded. Song Minji studied the technical displays around the room. You know, your power distribution system is really elegant. How do you maintain stable energy flow across such long distances? Our engineers would love to study this design. The interrogator blinked his 6 eyes in sequence. You are threatened with extinction. That would be unfortunate, Song Minji agreed. But right now I'm more interested in your engineering solutions. The energy coupling in your wall systems is particularly clever. She proceeded to analyze the interrogation room's technical systems, pointing out improvements and asking detailed questions about construction methods. The interrogator found himself explaining hegemony engineering instead of extracting human secrets. Yun Tai was in the communication wing, where his language skills were considered valuable. His interrogator tried to break him by forcing him to listen to the recorded screams of tortured prisoners from his own species. But humans were new to the galaxy, so there were no recorded human screams to play. Instead, Yun Tai listened to the cries of other species and began analyzing their linguistic patterns. Interesting, he said, making mental notes. This species uses tonal variations to express pain intensity, and this one incorporates ultrasonic frequencies. The linguistic diversity in this prison is remarkable. His interrogator, growing frustrated, played recordings of other tortures. That's a fascinating grammatical structure, Yun Tai observed. Do they maintain syntax even under extreme stress? What does that tell us about their cognitive architecture? By the end of the first day, word was spreading through the prison staff. The new prisoners weren't breaking. Instead, they were teaching, analyzing, and showing interest in everything around them. Young Tyne, an alien janitor who cleaned the prison cells, had never seen anything like it. He stopped outside Li Hyun's cell during evening cleaning. Are you not afraid? Tyne asked quietly in his own language. Yun Tai had been teaching the translation protocols to his cellmates through the ventilation system, so Li Hyun understood. Of what? Li Hyun asked. Of pain, of death, of the hegemony. Li Hyun thought about this seriously. Pain ends. Death is natural, and the hegemony is just a government run by people like any other. Why should I be afraid of people? Taine's simple question traveled through the prison that night. From cell to cell, prisoners whispered the same thing. The humans asked why they should be afraid. Rex Mora lay on his sleeping platform, but for the first time in years he wasn't staring at nothing. He was thinking about Lee Hyun's question. Are you broken? In the interrogation wings, the humans continued their unintentional education sessions. Park Jina taught physics, Kim Woo analyzed security systems, Song Minji discussed engineering, and Yoon Tai explored linguistics. Their interrogators were learning more from the prisoners than the prisoners were revealing about human secrets. The warning lights flashed red across the bridge of the New Seoul. Captain Lee Hyun watched the displays with calm eyes as his ship shook violently around him. The quantum drive was failing, and they were about to drop out of faster-than-light travel in the middle of nowhere. Status report, Lee Hyun said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Dr. Park Jina looked up from her console, sweat on her forehead. The quantum tunnel is collapsing. I can't stop it. We're going to exit hyperspace in 30 seconds. Engineer Song Minji's hands flew over her controls. I'm trying to stabilize the drive, but something is pulling us out. It's like we hit some kind of barrier. Commander Kim Woo checked his weapon systems automatically. Old habits from his military days. Should I prepare for trouble, Captain? Always, Lee Hyun replied. Yoon Tae, make sure our communication systems are ready. We might need them. Communications Officer Yoon Tae nodded, adjusting his headset. All channels open and ready, sir. The ship lurched one final time, then suddenly everything went quiet. The red warning light stopped flashing. Through the main view screen, stars appeared where empty space had been moments before. But these weren't the familiar stars they expected to see. Where are we? Park Jina whispered, staring at her navigation screens. Before anyone could answer, Song Minji gasped. Captain, you need to see this. Lee Hyun looked at the main screen and felt his eyebrows rise. Massive structures filled the space around them. They weren't natural. These were built by someone, something intelligent. The structures stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction, connected by bridges of light that pulsed with energy. It's a megastructure, Park Jina breathed. Someone built this. The engineering required would be incredible. Kim Woo was already scanning for threats. I'm reading thousands of ships moving through those structures. Some of them are heading our way. Lee Hyun studied the approaching vessels on his screen. They were sleek, dark, and much larger than the New Seoul. Their design was unlike anything humans had ever built. Sharp angles, organic curves, and weapon ports that were clearly visible even from a distance. Incoming transmission, Yoon Tai announced. Multiple languages, but I'm getting translation software to work on it. A moment later, a harsh voice filled the bridge, speaking broken but understandable English. Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space of the hegemony of eternal dominion. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in immediate destruction. Lee Hyun looked around at his crew. Park Jina was studying the alien ships with scientific curiosity. Song Minji was analyzing their technology through the ship's sensors. Kim Woo was calculating their chances in a fight. Yoon Tae was working to improve the translation system. None of them looked afraid. Sir, should we run? Song Minji asked, though her tone suggested she was more interested in studying the aliens than fleeing. With what? Kim Woo pointed at his tactical display. We're surrounded by 50 ships and each one is 5 times our size. Lee Hyun stood up from his captain's chair. Open a channel, Yoon Tae. Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Lee Hyun, of the human vessel New Seoul. We seem to have had a navigation error. We're not looking for trouble. We're explorers. The response came quickly. Humans. Unknown species. You will be brought before the sector governor for evaluation. Do not attempt to flee, or you will be destroyed. 3 of the massive alien ships moved closer, taking positions around the New Seoul. Tractor beams locked onto the human ship, and Lee Hyun felt the gentle pull as they began moving toward one of the megastructures. Fascinating, Park Jina said, watching the alien technology work. The energy efficiency of those tractor beams is incredible. We could learn so much from this. If they don't kill us first, Kim Woo muttered, but he didn't sound particularly worried about it. The journey to the megastructure took an hour. During that time, The crew of the New Sol got their first real look at the hegemony of eternal dominion. Ships of dozens of different designs moved through the space between structures. Some looked insectoid, others were geometric, and a few seemed to flow like liquid metal. So many different species, Yunte observed. This isn't just one alien race, it's an empire. A big one, Song Minji added, studying the sensor data. These structures extend beyond our sensor range. This could cover several star systems. They were brought to a docking bay inside one of the larger structures. The bay was enormous, easily capable of holding 100 ships the size of the New Sol. Alien workers moved about, but Lee Hyun noticed something odd about their behavior. They moved with their heads down, never making eye contact with the guards who watched them. "Captain," Kim Woo said quietly, "look at how they act. These aren't free people." Lee Hyun nodded. He'd noticed the same thing. Fear. These aliens were afraid of their own kind, the ones in charge. The airlock hissed as it equalized pressure. A boarding ramp extended from the structure to their ship. Heavy footsteps echoed as a group of aliens approached the New Sol. The first alien through the airlock was massive, over 2 meters tall and covered in what looked like natural armor. It had 4 arms and eyes that glowed with a cold blue light. Behind it came smaller aliens carrying weapons. "I am Enforcer Kulseth," the large alien announced. "You will come with us, do not resist." Lee Hyun stepped forward. "I'm Captain Lee Hyun. These are my crew members, Dr. Park Jina, Commander Kim Woo, Engineer Song Minji, and Communications Officer Yoon Tae. We're pleased to meet you." The alien enforcer paused. Its glowing eyes studied Lee Hyun's face. "You are not afraid?" "Should I be?" Lee Hyun asked with genuine curiosity. The other aliens behind the enforcer shifted nervously. This wasn't the response they expected. Throughout the galaxy, first contact with the hegemony meant immediate submission or death. No species had ever responded with calm politeness. "You do not understand," Kulseth said, its voice uncertain, for the first time. "You are prisoners of the hegemony. Your species will kneel before our power or be destroyed." Park Jina spoke up from behind Lee Hyun. "Excuse me, but could you explain how your gravity generation works in this structure? The field strength seems perfectly uniform, which should be impossible with conventional technology." The enforcer's mouth opened and closed without sound. In thousands of years of conquest, no prisoner had ever asked about their technology before. Kim Woo was studying the alien weapons. "Interesting design philosophy. Energy-based, but you've kept physical components for psychological impact. Smart." Song Minji was looking at the structure around them. "The architecture is impressive. How do you maintain structural integrity across such vast distances?" Yoon Tae was listening to the various alien languages being spoken in the distance. "Your empire includes species with completely different vocal systems. How do you manage communication across such diversity?" Kulseth looked from human to human, its alien features showing confusion. "You are prisoners," it repeated weakly. "Yes, you mentioned that," Lee Hyun said politely. "So, who's in charge here? We'd like to speak with them about our situation." The other alien guards were whispering among themselves in their own language. Yoon Tae was picking up fragments through his translation system, and what he heard made him smile. "They're confused," he whispered to Lee Hyun. "They're saying we're either very brave or very stupid." "Why not both?" Song Minji said cheerfully. Kulseth finally regained some composure. "You will be brought before Sector Governor Vexithara. She will decide your fate." "Excellent," Lee Hyun said. "Lead the way." As they walked through the corridors of the alien structure, the humans looked around, with open interest. They asked questions about the technology, complimented the efficiency of the design, and treated their captors more like tour guides than enemies. Other aliens in the corridors stopped to stare. Word was already spreading through the structure about the strange new species that didn't show fear. Sector Governor Vexithara waited in a vast chamber decorated with the symbols of conquered worlds. She was a tall, elegant alien with silver skin and multiple eyes that could focus independently. She had ruled this sector for 3 centuries, and every species that entered her chamber prostrated themselves before her throne. The humans walked in and looked around with obvious appreciation for the architecture. "Impressive," Li Hyun said, nodding respectfully to Vexithara. "You must be the sector governor. I'm Captain Li Hyun. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Vexithara's multiple eyes all focused on the human captain. In 300 years of rule, no one had ever thanked her for their own judgment hearing. "You are either insane or from a species of warriors beyond anything the galaxy has seen," she said slowly. "We're explorers," Park Gina corrected politely. "Though I suppose the two aren't mutually exclusive." For the first time in centuries, Sector Governor Vexithara didn't know what to do next. 3 weeks after the humans arrived at Cathara Prime, something extraordinary was happening. Prisoners who hadn't spoken to each other in years were having conversations. Guards who had never questioned orders were asking why certain procedures existed. And in the deepest cells of the prison, old warriors were remembering what courage felt like. Rex Mora stood at his cell barrier for the first time in months, listening to Li Hyun tell stories about Earth. The human captain talked about mountains and oceans, about cities where people chose their own leaders, and about mistakes that led to exploration among the stars. "You make it sound like your species is not perfect," Rex Mora said, confused. "Throughout the galaxy, conquerors always claimed perfection for their own kind." "Perfect?" Li Hyun laughed. "We're terrible at a lot of things. We fight among ourselves, we make stupid decisions, and we have terrible taste in entertainment. But we keep trying to do better. The hegemony teaches that only the strong deserve to rule," Rex Mora said slowly. "That weakness must be eliminated." "That's one way to look at things," Li Hyun agreed. "But we found that our weakness often becomes our strength. Our stubbornness means we don't give up. Our curiosity gets us into trouble, but it also leads to discovery. Our need to help each other has saved us more times than any weapon." Down in the interrogation levels, Dr. Park Gina was conducting what had become daily science seminars with her captors. Interrogator Zulneth now brought notes to their sessions and asked detailed questions about human physics. "You're quantum tunneling. Technology should be impossible," Zulneth said, studying Park Gina's latest explanation. "The energy requirements alone would destroy any ship." "That's what we thought too," Park Gina replied cheerfully. "But then we realized we were thinking about it wrong. Instead of forcing our way through space-time, we learned to ask it politely to let us pass." "You cannot negotiate with the fabric of reality," Zulneth protested. "Why not?" Park Gina asked. "Reality responds to observation, right? Quantum mechanics proved that centuries ago. We just took it one step further." Similar scenes were playing out throughout the prison. Kim Woo had turned his torture sessions into tactical discussions with pain-giver Kraz, who was now more interested in improving his combat techniques than extracting information. "Your species must be naturally violent to develop such effective fighting methods," Kraz observed as Kim Woo demonstrated a defensive technique. "Actually, most humans hate fighting," Kim Woo said. "We just got good at it because we needed to. Protect the people we care about. Violence is a tool, not a way of life." Song Minji had convinced her interrogators to let her inspect the prison's power systems. She was now leading a team of guards through maintenance tunnels, pointing out inefficiencies and suggesting improvements. "You could increase energy output by 30% with minor modifications," she explained to Chief Engineer Vothek, "and reduce maintenance costs at the same time." "Why would you help us improve our prison?" Vothek asked. "Knowledge wants to be shared," Song Minji replied. "Besides, if people have to be imprisoned, they might as well be imprisoned efficiently." Yoon Tai had established himself as the prison's unofficial translator. Guards brought him linguistic problems from throughout the facility, and he was mapping the communication patterns of dozens of species. "Language is life," he told anyone who would listen. "Every word carries the history and dreams of a people. When you understand how someone talks, you understand how they think." But it was the effect on other prisoners that truly worried the hegemony authorities. Kekstari had been imprisoned for 15 years after her people's failed rebellion. She had spent those years in silent despair, waiting to die. But now she found herself talking to the human called Park Gina through the ventilation system. My people were scientists, Kextari whispered during the night shift when guards were fewer. We created beautiful things, made discoveries that helped others. The hegemony destroyed it all because we refused to build weapons. What kind of discoveries? Park Gina asked with genuine interest. For the first time in 15 years, Kextari smiled. She began describing the crystal gardens her people had grown, the way they had learned to make light dance through living gems, the music they had created with resonating minerals. That sounds amazing, Park Gina said. Could you teach me about crystal harmonics? It might help with our quantum field stabilization. In another wing, old Vroon the philosopher was explaining the ethical frameworks of his dead civilization to Li Hyun. In the technical sections, young Nara was learning engineering principles from Song Minji. Throughout the prison, knowledge was flowing like water, finding new channels. The guards noticed it first. Prisoners were walking differently, holding their heads up instead of staring at the floor. They were helping each other with small kindnesses, sharing food, offering comfort. Some were even singing the old songs of their people, melodies that hadn't been heard in decades. This is unacceptable, Warden Mexthu announced at the weekly staff meeting. Prisoner morale has increased by 400%. Compliance rates are down. Several inmates have requested access to educational materials. Educational materials? Asked Guard Captain Zelmoth, confused. Why would prisoners want to learn? The humans, said Interrogator Zulneth. They make learning seem enjoyable, natural. They act as if knowledge belongs to everyone. Dangerous thinking, Mexthu growled. I'm requesting a psychological evaluation team from Hegemony Central Command. These humans may be using some form of mental influence. But before the evaluation team could arrive, something unprecedented happened. It started in the middle of the night shift when security was lightest. Rex Mora stood at his cell barrier and spoke clearly for the first time in 20 years. I am Rex Mora, King of the Valdris, and I am not broken. The words echoed through the maximum security wing. Other prisoners looked up from their sleeping platforms. Guards paused in their rounds. I am Kextari of the Crystal Builders, came another voice. My people created beauty, and I remember how. Vroon the Wise, keeper of the old laws, and my mind is still my own. Nara of the Cloud Cities, and I have learned new things. One by one, prisoners throughout the facility were standing up, stating their names and declaring their humanity. Not their hegemony prison numbers, but their real names, their real identities. This is a security breach, Guard Captain Zelmoth announced, activating alarm systems. All prisoners returned to sleep positions immediately. But the declarations continued. Dozens of voices, then hundreds, each prisoner remembering who they had been before the hegemony broke them. Li Hyun's voice cut through the chaos, calm and clear. My name is Li Hyun, captain of the starship New Soul, citizen of Earth, and friend to anyone who wants to be free. The alarms wailed, but they couldn't drown out the sound of prisoners singing. Old war chants, traditional melodies, religious hymns, and lullabies their mothers had taught them. The songs mixed together into something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy. The sound of hope. Warden Mexthu activated the prison's mass punishment systems. Energy fields crackled through the cells, designed to inflict pain and restore order. But instead of silence, the singing grew louder. Kim Woo's voice joined the chorus, teaching other prisoners a marching song from human military tradition. Park Gina was harmonizing with Kextari, their voices blending human and alien melodies. Song Minji was keeping rhythm by tapping on her cell walls, creating a beat that echoed through the prison structure. In the control room, technicians stared at their monitoring equipment in disbelief. Prisoner stress levels are decreasing even under punishment, one reported. They're not responding to pain compliance protocols. How is that possible? Mexthu demanded. They're supporting each other, the technician said. When one voice falters, others get louder. They're sharing the pain instead of feeling it alone. The singing continued through the night. By morning, News of the incident had reached Hegemony. Central Command. Emergency meetings were called. Sector Governor Vex Uthera was summoned to explain how a routine prisoner intake had turned into the largest coordinated resistance action in Hegemony history. Supreme Arbiter Kulveth reviewed the reports with growing alarm. Not because of the rebellion itself, the Hegemony had crushed thousands of rebellions, but because of how it had started. Not with weapons or violence, but with words, with stories, with songs, with hope. Send in the Psychological Warfare Division, Kulveth commanded, and prepare a full battle fleet. If we cannot break these humans through normal means, we will make an example of their entire species. But in the deepest levels of Cathara Prime, something was already growing beyond the Hegemony's ability to control. Prisoners were planning, organizing, and remembering skills they thought they had lost forever. Rex Mora was teaching combat techniques to inmates who had never fought before. Kextari was showing others how to modify the prison's crystal-based technology. Vrun was helping establish communication networks that the guards couldn't detect. And the humans continued to be themselves, curious, helpful, and absolutely convinced that things could be better than they were. The revolution had begun, not with violence, but with the simple human belief that everyone deserved to be free. The prison break happened on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. But it wasn't the kind of prison break the Hegemony expected. Instead of a violent riot, the humans organized something unprecedented, a systematic liberation where stronger prisoners helped weaker ones, where escaping inmates paused to free others, and where the first priority was making sure no one was left behind. Rex Mora led the assault on the guard towers, but only after Kim Woo had taught him how to disable security systems without killing the guards inside. Dead guards can't learn better, Kim Woo had explained. Alive guards might realize they're on the wrong side. Kextari used her knowledge of crystal harmonics to overload the prison's energy barriers, while Song Minji guided teams through maintenance tunnels she had mapped during her inspections. Park Gina coordinated the timing using mathematical models she had developed during her science seminars with the interrogators, but the most shocking part happened when the outer walls fell. Instead of running to the spaceport to steal ships and flee, the escaped prisoners turned around and began broadcasting to the galaxy. Yoon Tai had rigged a communication system from spare parts throughout the prison. His voice, speaking in dozens of languages, carried across Hegemony space. This is the free prison of Cathara Prime. We are no longer the Hegemony's captives. We are no longer afraid. Any beings who wish to be free, we will teach you how. The message reached Hegemony worlds within hours. On planets where entire populations had been enslaved for centuries, people looked up at the sky and whispered impossible words. Free prison. On the industrial world of Maltech 7, factory worker Jektar heard the broadcast while assembling starship components. For the first time in his life, he stopped working without being ordered to stop. Around him, other workers noticed the silence. Did you hear? Jektar whispered. The impossible species. His supervisor, Grexman, replied quietly. They say the humans don't kneel. On the agricultural planet of Varan Prime, farmer Yasandra had spent 30 years growing food for Hegemony overlords, while her own people starved. The broadcast reached her in the fields, and she stood up slowly from her planting. Teacher, she called to the old scholar who worked beside her. What does it mean to be free? Old Mexthul had once been a professor of philosophy before his world was conquered. He had been forced to work in the fields for 20 years, forbidden to think or teach. Now he straightened his bent back and spoke words he had not dared to say in decades. Freedom means you choose your own path, he said clearly. Freedom means no one owns your mind. The words spread from worker to worker, field to field, planet to planet. For the first time in Hegemony history, beings across the galaxy were asking questions instead of following orders. In the capital system, Supreme Arbiter Kulveth watched the reports flood in with growing panic. Productivity was down on 17 worlds. 3 sector governors had reported unusual behavior among their populations, and most disturbing of all, some Hegemony officials were beginning to ask questions about their own orders. Deploy Admiral Keth Torak with the full 7th Fleet, Kulveth commanded. Find the human homeworld and destroy it completely. Make it clear what happens to species that resist the hegemony. Admiral Keth Torak was the hegemony's most successful military commander. He had crushed 47 rebellions and destroyed 16 species that had dared to resist. His fleet consisted of 800 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. But as Keth Torak prepared for departure, something unprecedented happened. Some of his own officers came to his quarters with questions. "Admiral," said Captain Velquan, his most trusted aide, "we have served the hegemony for decades. But I must ask, why do we fight beings who offer knowledge instead of resistance?" Keth Torak stared at his subordinate. "Because the hegemony commands it." "Yes, sir. But why does the hegemony command it?" It was a simple question that no one had ever asked before. Throughout the fleet, officers and crew members were asking similar questions. Not openly, not yet, but in quiet conversations when the senior command wasn't listening. Meanwhile, on Cathara Prime, the liberated prison had become something extraordinary. Instead of scattering across the galaxy, most of the freed prisoners had chosen to stay and build something new. They were creating the galaxy's first free society in millennia. Li Hyun found himself reluctantly accepting the title of coordinator, not ruler, he insisted, because free people didn't need rulers, just organizers. His first act was to establish the Galactic Code of Freedom, a simple document based on human principles. "All beings have the right to think freely," the code began. "All beings have the right to speak freely. All beings have the right to choose their own path. No being may own another being. Knowledge belongs to everyone." Dr. Park Jina set up the galaxy's first free university in the prison's former interrogation chambers. Her classes on physics and engineering were attended by species from across the galaxy, all eager to learn sciences that the hegemony had kept secret. Kim Woo established the Free Defense Corps, training volunteers in military tactics. But his first lesson was always the same. We fight to protect, not to conquer. We fight to free, not to enslave. Song Minji led teams of engineers in converting the prison facilities into factories, workshops, and laboratories. But these were different from hegemony factories. No one was forced to work. Everyone shared. The profits and the products were designed to help rather than harm. Yuntai expanded the communication network, broadcasting lessons in freedom across the galaxy. His translators worked in hundreds of languages, spreading the message that liberation was possible. The effect was electric. Within weeks, underground resistance cells were forming on dozens of worlds. Not violent revolutionaries planning destruction, but teachers and thinkers sharing knowledge that the hegemony had tried to suppress. On Maltech 7, factory workers began organizing into voluntary cooperatives. They still produced Starship components, but now they decided together how to distribute the work and share the benefits. On Viren Prime, farmers like Ysandra started growing food for their own communities first, sending only surplus to the hegemony overseers. When the overseers complained, the farmers politely explained that free people feed themselves before feeding their oppressors. The hegemony's response was predictable: more force, harsher punishments, stricter controls. But for the first time in galactic history, force wasn't working. You couldn't beat ideas out of people who were no longer afraid of being beaten. Young, Nara, who had been a small-time criminal before her imprisonment, became a symbol of change throughout the Outer Rim. Her broadcasts reached species that had been conquered so long ago they had forgotten their own names for their worlds. "I was nobody," she said in her nightly transmission. "A small thief from a broken world. But the humans taught me that nobody is nobody. Everyone matters. Everyone can choose to be better." Her words reached Tyne, the young janitor who had first spoken to Li Hyun. He was still cleaning cells on another hegemony prison world, but now he whispered Nara's words to other prisoners. "Nobody is nobody." The phrase spread through hegemony space like a virus of hope. On worlds where beings had been reduced to numbers and functions, people began remembering their names, their histories, their dreams. 3 months after the Cathara Prime liberation, the first hegemony world declared independence. The agricultural planet of Seren took a vote, something that hadn't happened in the galaxy for 1,000 years, and chose freedom. When hegemony forces arrived to restore order, they found something that had never existed in their experience: an entire planet working together voluntarily. No slaves to free, no rulers to capture, no capital to occupy. Just millions of beings who had decided they would rather be free than safe. The hegemony fleet withdrew in confusion. They had weapons designed to destroy resistance, but no one was resisting. The planet simply refused to obey, and there seemed to be no way to make free people obey without destroying them all. Within days, 17 more worlds declared independence. Supreme Arbiter Kolveth realized that the threat was beyond anything the hegemony had ever faced. This wasn't a traditional rebellion that could be crushed with superior force. This was something new and terrifying, the birth of hope itself. Find their source, he commanded Admiral Keth Torak. Find the human homeworld and destroy it. Cut off the head of this revolution. But as Keth Torak's massive fleet set course for human space, neither he nor his supreme commander understood a fundamental truth about humanity. They had never had just one head to cut off. The revolution wasn't being led from Earth. It was being led by every human who refused to kneel, every alien who remembered what freedom felt like, and every being who dared to believe that things could be better, and there were more of them every day. Admiral Keth Torak's invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, expecting to find a primitive world cowering before the might of the hegemony. Instead, they found something that made no sense according to everything. They knew about galactic power. Earth was ready for them, not with massive defense platforms or planet-killing weapons, but with something far more dangerous: organization. The solar system buzzed with activity as ships from dozens of species worked together, with a coordination the hegemony had never achieved even after millennia of conquest. "Admiral," reported Captain Velquan, staring at his tactical displays, in confusion. "I'm reading over 3,000 vessels in defensive positions, but sir, most of them aren't human ships." Keth Torak studied the sensor data with growing alarm. Ships from liberated hegemony worlds had somehow traveled across the galaxy to defend humanity's homeworld. Species that had been enemies for centuries were flying in coordinated formations. How did they organize this? He muttered. How did they even communicate with each other? The answer came in the form of a transmission from Earth. President Ko Sunmi appeared on every screen in the hegemony fleet, speaking with calm authority. "Admiral Keth Torak, I am Ko Sunmi, elected President of the United Earth Government and current Speaker for the Alliance of Free Peoples. We know why you're here. The hegemony has sent you to destroy humanity because we refuse to bow to tyranny." Behind her, the bridge of a human starship showed something extraordinary. Humans working alongside aliens from dozens of species, all wearing the blue insignia of the Alliance of Free Peoples. "You have made two errors in your calculations," President Ko continued. "First, you assume we are alone. We are not. Second, you assume we will fight you the way the hegemony fights, with hatred and violence. We will not." Admiral Keth Torak activated his communication system. "I am Admiral Keth Torak of the Hegemony 7th Fleet. You will surrender immediately, or face complete annihilation." President Ko smiled sadly. "Admiral, your own officers are listening to this conversation. Ask them if they truly want to commit genocide against beings whose only crime was refusing to be slaves." In the hegemony ships, something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in their careers, officers were questioning orders in real time. Captain Velquan looked at his admiral with doubt in his eyes. "Sir," Velquan said quietly, "are we really here to destroy an entire species for wanting to be free?" "We follow orders," Keth Torak replied, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "But why these orders?" another officer asked. "What threat do these humans actually pose to our people?" Similar conversations were happening on ships throughout the hegemony fleet. For centuries, their crews had followed orders without question. But something about humanity's approach to conflict was making them think in ways they had never thought before. "All ships, prepare for attack," Keth Torak commanded. But as the hegemony fleet moved forward, They encountered something completely outside their experience. Instead of meeting them with weapons blazing, the Alliance ships opened communications channels on every frequency. Thousands of voices began speaking at once, but not with threats or demands. They were telling stories. Former hegemony prisoners talked about their time on Cathara Prime, describing how humans had treated them with respect and dignity. Liberated farmers from agricultural worlds explained how they had learned to govern themselves without oppression. Children from freed colonies sang songs in their native languages for the first time in generations. Dr. Park Gina's voice cut through the chaos, speaking directly to the hegemony science officers. We've made some incredible discoveries about quantum physics that could revolutionize space travel. Would you like to hear about them? Song Minji addressed the fleet's engineers. We've developed some new manufacturing techniques that increase efficiency while reducing waste. They could solve resource shortages on dozens of worlds. Kim Woo spoke to the military personnel. We've learned some interesting things about defensive tactics that don't require conquest or occupation. Want to discuss strategy? In the flagship's communications center, technicians stared at their equipment in disbelief. Admiral, they're not jamming our communications. They're adding to them. They're trying to teach us things. Keth Torak felt something he had never experienced in centuries of military service, confusion that came not from tactical difficulty, but from moral uncertainty. Sir, Captain Velquan said slowly, permission to ask a question that may be considered inappropriate. Denied. Kethatorak replied automatically. I'm going to ask it anyway, sir. When was the last time we fought to protect something instead of destroy something? The question hung in the air of the flagship's bridge. Around the galaxy, on liberated worlds and free stations, that same question was being asked in hundreds of languages. General Nam Jihoon, commanding the Alliance Defense Fleet, opened a direct channel to Kethtorak's flagship. The old human military commander appeared on screen, his uniform bearing no medals or decorations of conquest. Admiral, Nam Jihoon said respectfully, you've served your people for a long time. You've followed orders, maintained discipline, protected your chain of command. I respect that. But I want to ask you something. Soldier to soldier. Kethatorak found himself listening despite his intentions. What are you protecting by destroying us? Nam Jihoon continued. What are your people gaining by eliminating species that offer knowledge instead of threats? What kind of galaxy are you building for your own children? For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kethatorak had no immediate answer. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The Alliance fleet didn't attack the hegemony ships. Instead, they surrounded them and continued talking, sharing, teaching. They broadcast technical specifications for improving hegemony, ship designs. They offered medical techniques that could save lives. They shared art and music and philosophy from hundreds of cultures. Some hegemony ships opened fire, but their weapons were met not with return fire, but with rescue ships that pulled damaged crews to safety and offered medical aid without asking questions about loyalty or allegiance. Why are you helping us? Demanded Captain Zorthak after his ship was rescued from a reactor overload. Dr. Choi In-soo, the human physician treating his injuries, looked surprised by the question. Because you're hurt. Why wouldn't we help? It was a simple answer that completely undermined everything the hegemony had taught about the nature of power and conflict. The turning point came when young communications officer Trenwi, serving aboard one of the hegemony destroyers, made an unprecedented decision. Instead of following protocol, he opened his ship's communication arrays to full broadcast power and sent a message across the galaxy. This is Officer Trenwi of the Hegemony Ship Dominator. I have served the Hegemony for 12 years. I have followed every order without question. But today I must ask, what are we really fighting for? The humans offer us knowledge, friendship, and freedom to choose our own paths. In return, we offer them death. This seems wrong to me. His message was picked up and rebroadcast by Alliance ships throughout the system. Within hours, it reached every corner of hegemony space. On the flagship, Admiral Kethatorak stared at reports flooding in from across the galaxy. Entire hegemony fleets were standing down. Worlds were declaring independence. Officers were refusing orders that involved harming peaceful populations. "Admiral," Captain Velquan said quietly, "the crew is requesting permission to hear the full Alliance proposals for galactic government." "Denied," Kethtorak said, but his voice was weak. "Sir, with respect, I think we're going to listen anyway." And they did. For the first time in hegemony history, military crews made a collective decision to ignore orders and seek information for themselves. Li Hyun's voice came across the communications system, speaking from the bridge of the New Soul, which had been rebuilt and upgraded with technology from dozens of Alliance worlds. "Admiral Kethtorak, we know your orders are to destroy Earth and end the revolution, but we want to offer you something different. We want to offer you a choice." The choice, as Li Hyun explained it, was simple. The Alliance of Free Peoples was drafting a new galactic constitution based on consent rather than conquest. Any world, any species, any individual could choose to join or remain independent. There would be no forced membership, no tribute demands, no subjugation. "We're not trying to replace the hegemony with another empire," Li Hyun said. "We're trying to replace the idea of empire itself with something better, something based on cooperation instead of domination." The document that became known as the Galactic Constitution of Free Peoples was drafted in real time during the standoff at Earth. Representatives from liberated worlds participated through quantum communication networks that Song Minji had helped design. The principles were simple but revolutionary. Every being had the right to think freely, speak freely, and choose their own government. No being could own another being. Knowledge and discovery belonged to everyone. Conflicts would be resolved through discussion rather than conquest. Resources would be shared based on need rather than power. Most importantly, membership in the Alliance was voluntary and could be withdrawn at any time.